Canada, our home and native land.
It's a bit quiet.
True patriot love in all our sons command. Carte bras et porter nos pays, il sait porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants espoirs. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Let the doors be open que l'on ouvre les portes. Statements by members. Déclaration de députés. The Honourable Member for Courtenay Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, coastal communities are running out of time. Key federal fisheries programs that protect Pacific salmon and repair critical habitat are set to expire in March, and the federal government still hasn't confirmed their renewal. Communities cannot wait until the next budget for answers. Across the coast of British Columbia, remarkable work is happening. First Nations are leading salmon recovery and guardian programs. Local hatcheries and volunteer enhancement groups are restoring streams and rebuilding stocks. Salmon in the Classroom is educating thousands of students, and organizations like Redfish and the Coastal Restoration Society are removing debris, protecting estuaries, and repairing damaged watersheds. These leaders are showing what real stewardship looks like. But they can't plan or expand their work without federal commitments. We can't take our foot off the gas, Mr. Speaker. The government must renew these programs now.
Excuse me. The Honourable Member for Scarborough Centre, Don Valley East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on November 29, the United Nations International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people, we reflect on the urgent need for justice, dignity, and lasting peace. The people of Gaza are enduring what many international legal experts have identified as a genocide, with unimaginable loss of life and suffering. In the West Bank, escalating settler violence continues to displace families and deepen fear and instability. Canada and the international community must demand that the ceasefire be fully respected and that humanitarian aid reach those in need without any delay. Every person, Palestinian or Israeli, deserves to live in peace, security, and freedom. Solidarity means action, upholding international law, protecting civilians, and supporting a just political solution. We must not look away. Today and every day, we stand for human rights and a future where all can live in safety and hope. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Newmarket Aurora.
This week, a small family-owned business in Newmarket Aurora reached out to me. They've been serving our community a Bayview and Mullock for over 50 years with no major theft or crime. But in the past 2 years, they've been hit so often they've actually lost count. They spoke to other businesses in the area and they heard the same stories. The incidents are so frequent that their insurance won't even process their claims without threatening to drop them for being too high risk. They've added cameras, they've added floodlights, they've even considered barbed wire fencing just to protect what they own. Every week I hear from residents in Newmarket Aurora who tell me they no longer feel safe. And this is the reality under the Liberal soft on crime approach, where criminals are released on bail the very same day with no real consequences for their crimes. To the people of Newmarket Aurora, I see you, I hear you. Thank you for speaking up. Conservatives are committed to fighting for the legislation and the change that our communities need.
The Honourable Member for Mississauga Malton.
Speaker, when Hindu Brahmins from the Kashmir Valley faced persecution from Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb, they sought refuge from the 9th Sikh Guru, Tegh Bahadur, meaning brave with the sword. Aurangzeb had offered them a cruel choice: abandon your faith or offer a great sacrifice. On hearing this, a young Gobind Rai, who would go on to be the 10th Sikh Guru and son of Tegh Bahadur, looked to his father and said, "Father, what sacrifice could be greater than your own?" With those words echoing in his heart and mind, Guru Tegh Bahadur set out for Delhi, the faithful standing firm at his side. They accepted torture, they accepted death, but they did not bend, they did not yield. They stood unbroken in their own faith, and in doing so, protected the faith of another. It's in that memory that I rise today, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you so much, Reagan, for the 20. Holy smoke. Wow.
The honourable member for Cambridge.
Mr. Speaker, the alarming rise in scams targeting seniors is a growing concern in our communities, with a 300% increase in money lost to scams since 2020. Across the country, criminals are preying on trust and vulnerability, and seniors are losing their life savings.
That's right.
Money they worked for decades to earn. In Cambridge and North Dumfries, I've heard heartbreaking stories of individuals who believed they were helping a loved one or paying a bill, only to discover they were deceived. These scams get more sophisticated by the day and often leave victims feeling ashamed and isolated. We must do more to educate and protect our seniors from these predators. That's why this Saturday morning I'll be hosting Inside the Scam Playbook, a community town hall focused on raising awareness and sharing practical steps to safeguard yourself and those who care about. Knowledge is the best defense. Understanding how these scams work before they happen can prevent devastating loss. Together we can stop these criminals and ensure that no one in our community faces this alone.
Way to go, Carney. Way to go.
L'honorable député d'Alfred Pellan.
The Honourable Member for Alfred Pellan. Mr. Speaker, November 22nd was National Housing Day. We recall the essential importance of housing so everyone in Canada may have an affordable home. With Build Canada Homes, we will double housing construction, speed up housing starts, and restore accessibility for families. In my riding of Alfred Pellan, these investments are already paying off. 145 housing starts have been planned thanks to housing investments. They will house over 11,000 people. And let us recall, while we are achieving things, the official opposition leader only built 500 homes when he was housing minister. Our plan is a real plan, and it is already underway. With the budget 2025, we're building a stronger Canada.
Honourable member for Middlesex, London.
Christmas is the season of hope, a light that breaks through even the darkest of days. During this time, we remember the true meaning of this holy day, the birth of Jesus Christ, the light of the world. As Scripture reminds us in John 1:5, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. That promise is as real in Middlesex, London, as it was in Bethlehem. This is the season to carry the light into our communities through kindness, generosity, and cheerful giving. Thank you to everyone who brings warmth to our towns and villages, the parade organizers, the church choirs, first responders, volunteers, and neighbors who show up quietly and faithfully. You make this season glow. Let us keep the support going strong. Shop local to lift up our small businesses, and if able, pick up an extra item for our community food bank so that no one's left out in the cold. Every act of compassion, large or small, is an example of Christ. From my family to yours, Merry Christmas. May the peace of Jesus Christ guard your hearts and homes, and may God bless you in the year ahead.
Well said.
The honourable member for Kitchener-Conestoga.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise today to celebrate an incredible achievement by the Woolwich Thrashers sledge hockey team. At the recent Cruisers Cup tournament, our junior Thrashers struck gold, going undefeated and capping it off with a 4-0 shutout in the finals. Their determination, teamwork, and heart were on full display, with Wilder Sutton Rustin scoring all 4 goals and goalie Hadley Deckert earning a flawless shutout. Not to be outdone, the Thrashers' men and women's mixed open team battled through tough competition to claim bronze in their division. From start to finish, these athletes showed resilience, skill, and sportsmanship, qualities that make our community proud. Congratulations to the players, the coaches, and families. Your hard work and your spirit inspire us all. Go Woolwich Thrashers. Thanks, Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, we are celebrating a key milestone, the 50th anniversary of the Fédération des communautés francophones et acadiennes du Canada. Our communities mobilized to create a national organization. Hundreds of men and women continue to defend Francophones as well as their rights and interests all throughout Canada. The FCFA supports cultural vitality and contributes to building resilient, proud, and highly engaged communities. This half-century reminds us of all that they have accomplished, but also all that remains to be built. Together, let us continue to protect, advance, and showcase the Canadian francophonie for future generations. Congratulations for 50 years of engagement and advancements for the francophonie. The FCA is important and vital if we are to maintain our country's distinct French-English bilingual character. Thank you to everyone who bring our French language to life each and every day. Let us keep up the good work.
Okay, House is starting to fill up. Probably another 5 or 8 minutes of statements.
The Honourable Member for La Pointe-de-L'Île. Mr. Speaker, I am proud to mark the 40th anniversary of the Relève de Montréal Centre in La Pointe-de-L'Île. Since 1985, this organization has supported 15,000 families in their transition to parenthood and life with a child under 2. They provide trainings, support services, home assistance, prenatal and postnatal activities in Eastern Montreal. They share their expertise with parents and professionals throughout Greater Montreal and even internationally. I would like to congratulate Director José Laprate, President Martine Allary, and the entire Relève team. Every day, their respectful engagement with parents provides support to children, allowing them to thrive and to grow into accomplished citizens ready to enrich the Quebec society of tomorrow. Happy 40th, and vive les Relèves!
The Honourable Member for Milton East, Halton Hills South.
Hear ye, Mayor Gordon Krantz of the town of Milton is celebrating his 60th year of elected office. First elected as municipal councillor in 1965, and then as mayor when I was just 2 years old. Mayor Krantz is Canada's longest-serving mayor, having served under 10 prime ministers. Mayor Krantz has guided Milton through 4 decades of managing growth and modernization. His leadership, vision, and commitment has positioned Milton as one of the most educated, diverse, and dynamic communities in the country. And I, Mr. Speaker, have the distinct honor of having served as one of Mayor Krantz's municipal councillors, my first elected office back in 2018. Whether it's playing cards on Sunday afternoons at local Legion Branch 136 or capturing the moment, cutting the ribbon at a new business, Mayor Gord is quintessentially Milton. Congratulations to Mayor Krantz and his family on this incredible milestone, a testament to the power of public service that stands the test of time.
The Honourable Member for Essex.
Mr. Speaker, food costs are rising 40% faster in Canada than the United States, and families in Essex are feeling the pressure. My riding is one of Ontario's most productive agriculture regions, but after 10 years of a Liberal government, the Canadians who produce our food are struggling to pay for it. Farmers have been clear: scrap the industrial carbon tax. Instead of the Liberals continue to drive up the price of fertilizer and farm equipment, making it harder for farmers to grow, ship, and sell food. When 80.6% of Canadians say that food is their top expense pressure, this government should listen and take action by cutting hidden taxes to bring down costs and make life more affordable for families. Unlike the Prime Minister, who says, "Who cares?" to Canadians, along with my Conservative colleagues, I care about the families of Essex.
The Honourable Member for Yukon.
Mr. Speaker, this fall season brings fresh momentum, new opportunities, and renewed energy to the Yukon. Just last week at Yukon's annual Geoscience meeting, the mood in the room could not have been more positive. You ask why, Mr. Speaker? Because Budget 2025 is replete with investments in the North, like the $1 billion Arctic Infrastructure Fund, the $2 billion Critical Mineral Sovereign Fund, the expanded Critical Mineral Exploration Tax Credit. Add to that our government's ambitious Build Canada homes to ensure Northerners have access to homes they can afford, and so much more. With the recent referral of the Yukon BC Grid Connect to the Major Projects Office, we're also setting the stage for the longer term. We know how important clean power is to realize the full potential of Canada's Northwest, including the Yukon. Before closing, Mr. Speaker, may I send congratulations to newly elected Premier Curry Dixon and his cabinet staff, just sworn in on Saturday. I know we'll all be working together on priorities and opportunities for the Yukon. Let's keep Yukon strong, Canada strong.
The honourable member for Saskatoon University.
The Canadian taxpayer is spending hundreds of millions of dollars on the European Space Agency. Canadians could be expected to wonder why so much of their money is being spent on the European Space Agency and their private corporation, Harwell Science. But don't worry, we know the answer. 50% of the Harwell Science Innovation Facility is owned by Brookfield. That explains it. As always under this government, if it benefits Brookfield, it happens. But as with so many other projects, from timber to pipelines, if it doesn't benefit Brookfield, then it goes nowhere.
The Honourable Member for Vaudreuil.
158 years, Canadians have elected members of Parliament. They've travelled to Ottawa to take their seats in these chairs and make decisions that have helped build the greatest country in the world. Today was an honor to turn that work over, if only temporarily, to bright and inspiring grade 6 students from Forest Hill Elementary in St. Lazare. Under the guidance of Principal Laurent, dedicated teachers, and of volunteer parents, 106 students took their seats to become MPs for the day. They shared what Canada meant to them, what issues were most important, and we're proud to share ideas on how to build an even better Canada in the years ahead. The discussion was insightful and served as a reminder of our true purpose in this place, to leave a better Canada for our children than the one we ourselves inherited. Mr. Speaker, I want to sincerely thank the Forest Hill teachers and students who joined me today. This is your house, and your ideas, your energy, and your thoughtfulness are always welcome here. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Haldimand Norfolk.
This morning, at a multi-party parliamentary prayer breakfast, I shared from Mark 4:35, the moment when the disciples, caught in a violent storm, cried out to Jesus, "Don't you care?" These were experienced fishermen, but even they were overwhelmed by the winds and the waves. Today, many Canadians feel the same. They see economic uncertainty, rising unemployment, social tensions, immigration pressures, and new tariffs creating instability in their lives. The storms are real, and people are looking to their leaders for reassurance and results, not indifference. When the Prime Minister promises Canadians a deal on tariffs, a response of "who cares" is exactly what the people fear in the middle of an economic storm. In turbulent times, leadership is not just about expertise. Leadership begins with compassion, the willingness to see the storm that others are facing, and the courage to stand with them in it.
Here, here. Thank you so much, Gordon, for the 10. And no more, man. I'm serious. No more.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In a world full of noise, sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply talk to one another. I recently met with Pete Bumbachi, a constituent of mine in Eglinton Lawrence and an advocate for GenWell, Canada's Human Connection movement. GenWell champions social health, the idea that our relationships, connections, and interconnections with one another are essential not only to our mental and physical well-being, but also to the health of our society. This week is Talk to a Stranger Week, and I want to encourage Canadians to take a moment to look up from their phones and start a conversation with someone new. You never know the difference a simple hello can make. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And they keep messing with the audio.
Questions orales, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Who cares, Mr. Speaker? Monsieur le Président, le Premier Ministre.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister promised that he would negotiate in our favor before July 21st, but there haven't been any wins. The Americans have doubled tariffs, even though the Prime Minister has made concessions, getting rid of the digital services tax, the counter tariffs. He's even backed down on softwood lumber, but he got nothing in return, except for one thing, a contract from President Trump for Brookfield, an $80 billion contract. is getting more money for his business, the win that he promised Canadians? The Honourable Minister responsible for Canada-US trade. Mr. Speaker, as my colleague knows very well, Canadians did not place their trust in his judgment when it came to standing up to President Trump. They didn't trust him not to just sign any old agreement. What we've done is to work hard with the U.S. to find an agreement that will be in the interest of both industries and workers in Canada. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, we are taking more measures to help Canadian workers and industries.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, do you want the good news or the bad news? Well, in these times, I guess we'll have to start with the good news. It's all we've got. The good news is that David Eby, the Premier of BC, has absolutely no constitutional authority to block a pipeline. The bad news is that this Prime Minister does. Under Section 9210A of the British North American Act, works between provinces are exclusively the federal government's responsibility. So will the Prime Minister stop hiding behind the powerless Premier, get out of the way, and approve a pipeline to the Pacific today?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I'd invite the member opposite to buy a ticket to Calgary tomorrow to see how a federal government works with the provincial government to build Canada strong.
Leader of the Opposition.
Tomorrow, the Prime Minister will wave around in the air a worthless piece of paper that he says that the Premier of BC can veto any time he wants. Here's the political problem he has. Canadians want a pipeline. They know it's the best way to get our resources to market going around the United States of America, but his Keep It in the Ground caucus is standing in the way. Why doesn't he stand up to them and stand up for Canada?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Maybe the member opposite should explain to his constituents why the Premier of Alberta wants to stand beside our Prime Minister and talk about how to build Canada strong.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Yesterday, the Prime Minister claimed that he did not have the power to approve a pipeline. Well, too bad for him. The Constitution is public. 9210A says that it is exclusively a federal responsibility. He happens to be the Prime Minister. And he asked us to pass emergency legal powers in C5 to give him the personal authority to overturn any regulation in order to get the project done. In other words, this government has the exclusive power. He has the exclusive legal authority. Will he match that authority with responsibility and approve a pipeline to the Pacific today?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, what this Prime Minister is doing is leading. He's leading on building national projects. He's leading on building port capacity. He's leading on making Canadian steel, lumber, aluminum, and various commodities more available for homes, for big projects, to put people, unionized people, men and women from every part of this country to work building our great country. That's what this Prime Minister is doing. He's leading. What is the Leader of the Opposition doing, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
What am I doing? I'm standing in the House of Commons.
Right. Where is he?
Where's Waldo, Mr. Speaker? He's hiding. We know he's in the House of. We know that he's in Ottawa today. We know that he's in the.
I think that
Oh, come on. He said Waldo.
We're so close to the line there that we're actually stepping over it. So if the Honourable Opposition Leader would continue, but maybe in a different vein.
Mr. Speaker, I think we're finding out that if you're not there, you don't care. Yesterday, the Prime Minister said, who cares that Canadian workers are losing their jobs because he broke his promise to get a deal? We care. Why doesn't he show up and prove he does too?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
invite the member opposite to buy a ticket and come to Calgary tomorrow and see who cares.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, we've gone from elbows up to who cares under this Prime Minister. Remember, he said he would negotiate a win and he would get a deal by July 21st. Well, still no win, still no deal. He's made concession after concession. He backed down on counter tariffs, on the digital services tax, on the legal action against softwood lumber, and he got nothing in return. Well, one thing. Brookfield, his company, got $80 billion in contracts hand-signed by the president just 20 days after the two met. Is that what he meant when he said he would negotiate a win with Trump?
The Honourable Minister responsible for Canada-US trade.
Mr. Speaker, I know it's an inconvenient truth for the Leader of the Opposition that Canada right now, today, has the best deal of any trading partner of the United States. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? It's not good enough for Canadian workers, and it's not good enough for Canadian businesses. So unlike the Leader of the Opposition, who would have signed any bad deal put in front of him, the Prime Minister didn't do that. We said we would do the work to support Canadian workers and Canadian industries. We would buy Canadian, be our own best customer, and then negotiate a good deal with the United States.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, in 1995, a Liberal Prime Minister tried to do a fast one in Quebec, essentially cheating, lying, hiding things. And in 2025, will another Liberal Prime Minister once again do the same thing to the provinces in Quebec? Based on a mandate, based on an election where he talked about trade, where actually he's instead looking to benefit American shareholders and himself. Excuse me. The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship.
The Minister of Blinking.
I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. I can say for all Canadians, and especially for Quebecers, that I'm not focusing on things that have happened in the past. Instead, I am concentrating on what we can do to make our immigration system strong and to attract the best talents in the world for both Quebec and Canada. Under the Canada-Quebec agreement, Quebec is the one that selects its own permanent immigrants. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Well, I'll have to make my question clearer, or make it clear who I'm asking the question. I will have to ask the Minister of Canadian Heritage, the former leader of Équiterre. Is he comfortable with the fact that the Prime Minister is trying to get around Canada's legislation in order to push an oil agenda to the detriment of the climate? The Honourable Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture. Mr. Speaker, my colleague's question might be more relevant if he hadn't authorized drilling on Anticosti Island, right in the middle of the St. Lawrence. If he hadn't made it so that in Quebec, 50% of the oil is Albertan, all due to the leader of the Bloc Québécois. And perhaps what he's saying would be a bit more relevant if under our budget negotiations, the Bloc Québécois had brought forward a single measure to protect the environment. They did not bring in a single proposal for the environment. That's what we got from the Bloc Québécois. The Honourable Member, had we brought forward an environmental measure, that would have meant that there was one in the budget. The Minister of Heritage, the former Minister of the Environment, he is a Quebecer. He was a member of the Liberal caucus under Justin Trudeau. Will he solemnly promise to Quebecers and people from BC that he promises, as an environmentalist who used to rappel up buildings in Ontario, that none of these projects will go forward in Quebec or BC without the consent of the province, of Indigenous groups and social accessibility? Will he promise that that will never happen without that consent? The Honourable Government House Leader. The answer, Mr. Speaker, is yes.
Député de Charlesbourg.
The honourable member for Charlesbourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Well, Mr. Speaker, this morning we learned in La Presse that the Liberal member for Laval-Les-Îles is denying that he was involved in the Quebec Liberal Party's leadership race, although he did have a certificate for raising funds. Does the member know that he needs to ask a question about matters that affect the federal government? I think it's pretty clear that my question is about a member that is here across the way, and I think my question is in order. My question is very clear. Can the Prime Minister guarantee that no member of the Liberal caucus has broken federal or provincial laws?
Have some respect, Darrington. Calling the speaker by his first name. You have none.
That's fine. It's a good question.
Je vois pas que ça touche vraiment.
I don't think this has to do with any matter of federal government policy.
What are you talking about?
This is a matter of provincial legislation. That was raised in the question, so I don't think that we can allow this question.
What?
De Charlesbourg, Haute-Saint-Charles, une deuxième tentative.
Monsieur le Président.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm speaking about federal legislation. Let's recall that the former parliamentary leader of the Quebec Liberal Party, Mauro Whiskey, said to Pablo Rodriguez that there were dubious shenanigans happening in Ottawa. I really think that this is pushing it. This is a matter of unproven rumors. This has nothing to do with the federal government's policies. I cannot allow this question.
What the hell? What the hell's going on here?
Monsieur le Président, après avoir fait du...
Mr. Speaker, now we see that the Liberals want to move on to a cover-up.
South Innisfil.
The Prime Minister says Canadians need to sacrifice more and accept a lower standard of living and quality of life, while he says, who cares about critical trade talks with the U.S., acting more like an advance team for Brookfield and standing up for Canadians. Everywhere he goes, a deal for Brookfield follows while tariffs stay in place or go up. We learned this week that the Prime Minister stands to make millions in bonuses from Brookfield's success. Why does the Prime Minister have his elbows up for him and his Brookfield buddies, but says who cares about Canadian businesses and working families affected by tariffs?
Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Since Prime Minister has taken office, that's exactly what he's done. In fact, we stood up for Canadian companies and workers all across this country. And just in a few minutes, the Prime Minister will do it again. He'll stand up for Canadian companies, lumber companies, steel companies, and their hardworking union members that are fighting so hard to protect the economy of their region. Mr. Speaker, why don't they get on board and fight for Canadian families instead of for themselves?
The honourable member for Berwick South Innisfil.
So he shrugs off critical trade talks with a smug who cares. Here's something he can't shrug off and everyone should care about. Despite the conflict of interest and ethics screen he has on Brookfield, we found out this week that the Prime Minister met with Brookfield executives behind closed doors in his office in October, proving that his ethics screen is more like a smoke screen. The Prime Minister and Brookfield stand to gain millions from his policies. He knows he can't have any contact with Brookfield, but he met with them anyways. Why would he meet with Brookfield knowing he's barred from having any contact with them?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Labour.
Speaker, the Prime Minister in a few minutes will be doing his job. He'll be standing up for steel workers. Every project, every infrastructure project in this country depends on one thing, Mr. Speaker, Canadian steel, strong Canadian steels, and the workers who produce it, Mr. Speaker. We are strengthening our steel industry, standing by our steel workers, Mr. Speaker. We are investing in our workers. The Conservatives are investing in division.
And he's got a lot of forehead going on.
The honourable member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands.
The Prime Minister has backed down on counter tariffs. He's backed down on the legal challenge against the softwood lumber tariffs, and he's saying, who cares? Now, Canadians thought that he got nothing in his negotiations. It turns out that he just got nothing for Canadians. After his last trip to the White House, he got an $80 billion nuclear deal for his company, Brookfield, which will see the Prime Minister's own personal investments increase in value. So why is it that the Prime Minister is trading our national interests for his own personal financial interests?
The Honourable Minister of Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister is standing up today for workers across Canada, for BC Wood, building affordable housing across Canada with BC Wood. He's standing up to reduce the transportation costs across the country, to get BC Wood to build homes across Canada, and to bring steel from central Canada to the east and west more affordably. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is standing up for Canadians today, and we stand with him.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
The Prime Minister's not standing up, he's backing down, like he did on counter tariffs and like he did on the legal challenge for illegal softwood lumber tariffs. But it gets worse when it comes to this Prime Minister's record on Brookfield. We learned that the Liberals gave $500 million to the European Space Agency last week. Guess who owns 50% of the agency's site where the funds are going? None other than this Prime Minister's company, Brookfield. Again, seeing his own personal profits increase at the expense of Canadians, at the expense of Canadian investment and Canadian jobs. Why won't this Prime Minister put Canadians ahead of his own financial interests for once?
Here, here.
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, we are in a trade war. While the Conservatives focus on conspiracy theory, our Prime Minister will stand up later today and make...
Not from the top, but the member may continue.
Mr. Speaker, we are in a trade war. While the members opposite engage in conspiracy theories, our Prime Minister will stand up later today and announce major new supports for the forest products industry. On top of $1.2 billion we've already announced, Mr. Speaker. That's how we stand up for Canada.
The Honourable Member for Kildonan St. Paul.
The Prime Minister talked a big game during the election, but has since failed to deliver on the U.S. trade deal. He's backed down on every Trump demand, from the digital services tax to counter tariffs to softwood lumber. He has delivered exactly zero results for Canadians on the U.S. trade war. But to be fair, he is seeing some results with his Brookfield shares, with the Americans coincidentally signing an $80 billion nuclear deal with his company a mere 2 weeks after his last U.S. visit. So why is it that under this Prime Minister, his financial investments are doing so well, but Canadian workers are being left behind?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, while the Conservative leader is busy writing letters and debating himself, we're taking action to support Canadian steel and lumber industries and workers. We've got great news. This afternoon, we will introduce and announce new measures to further limit foreign steel imports to ensure that Canadian steel products and producers have better access to the domestic market, become our own best customer by building big with Canadian steel and Canadian lumber, increase protections for Canadian steel and lumber workers and businesses so they can adapt and thrive in this new global landscape. I urge the Conservative leader to tune in, get behind these measures.
L'honorable député de Repentigny.
The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals want a second dirty oil pipeline. Even with Trans Mountain, they still want more. This has nothing to do with Donald Trump. They want to sell more dirty oil to Asia. And thanks to C5, this pipeline will be able to ignore environmental assessments. It will fill up oil tankers, which will break the law and sail right through a protected marine area. Is there a single Liberal out there with a single shred of conscience? And if so, will they get up and say that this makes absolutely no sense? The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Mr. Speaker, like I did yesterday, I will speak about the projects that our government is bringing forward in order to build Canada strong. As I said yesterday, if we want to talk about Quebec, we have the project in Saint-Michel-des-Seines in Quebec. This is a project that will continue to improve energy storage and electric vehicle batteries. Like all of our projects, we will respect provincial jurisdiction, and we will respect Indigenous rights. The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, it is very clear that these Liberals are ashamed. Every time the Liberals hear about their new dirty oil pipeline, they can't wait to change the subject. They know that it's a climate disaster. They know that it's a biodiversity disaster. And they know that there's also the chance of this turning into a financial debacle like Trans Mountain. And yet tomorrow they're going to watch their PM have a photo op with Danielle Smith to announce a pipeline that actually they can't defend at all. We know they're ashamed, but the real question is, do they realize that they are right to be ashamed?
You like those transfer payments, though, huh?
Mr. Speaker, quite the contrary. We are extremely proud to be contributing to building this country, to building opportunities throughout Canada, like renewable energy throughout the country, like significant projects like the mine my colleague just mentioned. It is the Bloc Québécois that wants to destroy our economy. With them, and then we also have the Conservatives who simply want to open the floodgates. As usual, between the two of them, the Liberal Party is finding the correct middle ground. The Honourable Member for Montmorency-Charlevoix. Well, Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister has gone from elbows up to who cares after he failed to sign an agreement on tariffs with the U.S. He backed down on the digital services tax, on counter tariffs, and on the legal measures on softwood lumber. We thought that he hadn't gotten a win, but the truth is that he didn't get a win for Canadians, but the Americans did sign an $80 billion nuclear agreement with the Prime Minister's business, Brookfield. And we know that when Brookfield gets richer, so does the Prime Minister. Why is this Prime Minister sacrificing the interests of Quebecers and Canadians so that he can profit? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Industry. Mr. Speaker, when the Prime Minister makes a decision, it's in the interest of all Canadians. That is why we've made several trips, although our colleagues don't like that. We've gone abroad to find new investment. That's why this afternoon there's an important announcement, and I hope our colleagues will be paying attention, because there will be announcements on softwood lumber and others to support our industries. That's what we're doing all the time. The Honourable Member for Montmorency-Charlevoix. Well, Mr. Speaker, it takes a lot of work to manage all of the conflicts of interest having to do with Brookfield. The clerk of the Privy Council told us that teams are working around the clock to manage these conflicts of interest. He sold his Brookfield shares to be sure that he meets ethical standards, but the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff has told us that every day he's speaking to the Ethics Commissioner to ensure that everything is under control. The Prime Minister is ending up making tariffs go up every time he leaves the country. He can't seem to get a win for Canadians, and he needs dozens of people to regulate his conflicts of interest. Could he at the very least sell his Brookfield shares and stop being in a conflict of interest every single day? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, every time the Prime Minister leaves the country, it's in order to sign contracts with other countries, to find new markets for our products. Canada has what the world needs, and we will find new partners. Meanwhile, the Conservatives are pretending that they don't understand that, but actually, they do. And I'm honestly saddened to see the pathetic partisan games they're playing. They understand this perfectly well, but they pretend not to.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to trade with the Americans, the Prime Minister went from elbows up to who cares? He backed down on counter tariffs and on legal challenges to softwood lumber and got nothing in return when he went to Washington in October. Well, nothing for Canadians. Days later, the Americans signed an $80 billion nuclear deal with the Prime Minister's company, Brookfield. When is this Prime Minister going to get a deal for Canadians and not just a deal for himself and his company?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Conservative cares is like an oxymoron or some pathetic joke, because we know those two terms are like oil and water. They just do not mix. Who cares is our government cares. We're the ones standing up for our industries. We're making more announcements today. The Prime Minister is stepping up with increased protections for our domestic market, with new support for our industries and workers in steel and softwood lumber, and additional commitments to buy Canadian, so that we ensure that our workers and industries will thrive for generations to come.
The honourable member for St. Albert, Sturgeon River.
Mr. Speaker, it is being reported that the government's MOU with Alberta includes a multi-billion-dollar investment in carbon capture with Pathways Alliance, the premier carbon capture company connected with Pathways Alliance is none other than Entropy, which is owned by none other than Brookfield. Is the reason it has taken the government so long to get a deal with Alberta because the Prime Minister has been busy getting a deal for Brookfield?
Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I hate to break up their conspiracy theory, but Pathways is actually owned by 6 large oil companies, not Entropy.
That's not what he said.
Member for St. Albert, Sturgeon River.
Mr. Speaker, the very Brookfield fund that the Prime Minister stands to make millions of dollars in future bonus pay invested $300 million in Entropy. So, in the face of that, can the government provide the assurance that the deal negotiated by the Prime Minister will in no way benefit Entropy and, by extension, the Prime Minister's financial portfolio?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, here we go again, conspiracy theory. We're focused on building Canada. We're focused on working with Alberta to grow our natural resources in a responsible way in consultation with First Nations. That's how we build, not conspiracy theory.
For Mississauga Centre.
Mr. Speaker, young Canadians are ambitious and ready to build Canada's future. Budget 2025 makes generational investments in youth, from Canada's summer jobs and the student work experience program to expanded training and apprenticeship opportunities. These aren't short-term fixes. They're building blocks for a lifetime of success. While the opposition talks about cuts, this government's investing in the next generation. Could my good friend and colleague, the Minister of Jobs and Families, tell us how these programs turn ambition into opportunity for youth across Canada?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you very much to the member for the question. I've had the opportunity of meeting with youth from across the country about the investments that we're making in Budget 2025. $1.5 billion, Mr. Speaker, for youth skills and training, but a very specific program. I met with some members and some members of youth from that member's riding who talked about their excitement and enthusiasm about seeing the Climate Youth Corps in this budget. Mr. Speaker, youth are worried about the climate, and now they have something to look forward to, participating in a program that allows them to use their skills and get paid for them.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Once again, Canadians are finding out that this Prime Minister is all sizzle and no steak. It turns out that his big pipeline announcement won't actually build a pipeline. He's going to have a meeting to set up a plan and then sign a piece of paper that talks about maybe one day putting shovels in the ground. And now he's handing a veto power to the NDP in British Columbia, allowing them to block the whole thing. The Prime Minister is in Ottawa, and we know that he's having trouble with his own caucus on this issue. And now he's ducking the only question that Canadians have. Was yesterday the start of a real pipeline, or just the latest episode in Announce Now and Deliver Never?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I'd invite that member to get a ticket to Calgary tomorrow as well, and they could see why the Premier of Alberta thinks that things have never been so good in Canada.
For Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, that wasn't their answer yesterday. In fact, That isn't what the government said at all when they gave BC the veto in this House. Maybe they need to brush up on the Constitution because Section 92 explicitly gives them the power to build pipelines, whether David Eby likes it or not. He also got the legal authority from this House when they asked us to pass Bill C-5 to circumvent their own regulations. And the only thing holding them back now is the same gutless paralysis that kept our oil buried and Canadians with less money over the last 10 years. So instead of hiding behind the premiers, will he get up and announce that he's going to build a pipeline?
Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, they seem determined not to want to see any development in this country. What we understand is it's federal government jurisdiction to approve a pipeline. We also understand that if a proponent wants to take it to the major projects office, we expect them to work in conjunction with the affected jurisdiction and to consult First Nations. The Premier of Alberta understands that. Unfortunately, the members of the opposition don't.
Member for Calgary East.
The Prime Minister is all set to stage a fake pipeline photo op. What he'll probably do is hand the veto power to kill that pipeline to the BC Premier so he doesn't have to do it himself. Section 9210 of the Constitution says the federal government has the sole power to approve interprovincial projects and get shovels in the ground. The only person blocking the pipeline today is this Prime Minister. Will he stand up today and commit to repealing the taker ban, axing the industrial carbon tax, and actually getting this oil pipeline built?
Way to go, Dad!
The Honourable Government House Leader.
How many pipelines have they built? Zero. Mr. Speaker, we learned in the course of the last election campaign that the Leader of the Opposition had in fact never spoken to the Conservative Premier of Ontario, Mr. Ford. Now, I know the Leader of the Opposition to be someone who will look back, maybe look back too often, but he looks very backwards. He'll want to learn from that mistake, and I really suggest he not make that mistake again with the Premier of Alberta. Mr. Leader of the Opposition, please call Danielle Smith.
How is this not the same provincial issue that was told we were
With the
silent
amount of
before?
hot air coming out of that member's mouth, I'm surprised the Liberals haven't slapped a carbon tax on it. That answer was as fake as this Prime Minister's promises. Tomorrow, he'll make this grand show and pretend that he wants to get a pipeline built, but he'll hide behind someone else and get them to cancel it so he doesn't have to do it himself. The only person that can get this pipeline approved is this Prime Minister. Does the pipeline need to be sponsored by Brookfield so it actually gets built?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources. Speaker, unfortunately, that plane's going to get pretty full. I invite the member across to buy a ticket and come to Calgary and see what a federal government, how they can work with the provincial government to build Canada strong.
The Honourable Member for North Island, Powell River.
This Prime Minister promised to build Canada strong, and yet when it comes to a pipeline to BC's coast, a pipeline that could end the U.S. monopoly on Canadian oil and bring billions of dollars into Canada, he transforms into a helpless bystander, hiding behind the NDP Premier in BC, ceding responsibility, abdicating leadership. The Constitution is clear. National pipelines are the sole jurisdiction of the federal government, and failing to act is a betrayal of our national interests, it's a betrayal of our workers, and it's selling out to the Americans. Will they build the pipeline, yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Mr. Speaker, listen, today's good news for the many companies around the country who are working so hard to stay in business in the middle of this trade war. Whether it's steel, whether it's lumber, Mr. Speaker, we have their backs. And today we're going to talk more about what else we can do, not only to make sure that we protect these companies, but to help them grow their footprint, to sell their product to Canada and around the world. These guys cannot get their head out of the sand, literally, Mr. Speaker, for the sake of the companies right now who need our support. We'll do that work.
Honourable Member for North Island, Powell River.
You know, Mr. Speaker, maybe if Brookfield proposed a pipeline, we could actually get one backed by this Prime Minister. Let's be clear. A majority of Canadians support this pipeline. A majority of British Columbians support this pipeline. And as long as the world needs these resources, as long as the world needs oil and gas, until that last barrel comes out of the ground, as much of those resources as possible should come from right here in Canada. Why won't this government take up its mantle of leadership, deliver on what it promised, and get this pipeline built?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, news flash, we're in a trade war. We're in a trade war, and we don't get to choose the attitude and the response of other countries. We get to choose what we do in response to protect our industries here in Canada. Tariff-impacted industries know across Canada that this government is standing up to protect their interests at every step along the way. Whether the PM is overseas securing new investments to open up other markets, or whether he's offering new liquidity support and a package to help their businesses get through challenging times, we're steadfast in supporting Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Okanagan Lake West, South Kelowna.
Mr. Speaker, on a pipeline to the Pacific, the Prime Minister finds himself in a dilemma of his own making. He, his ministers, his MPs say one thing in British Columbia and another in Alberta, and now he's perched squarely on the fence. Under Section 9210 of the Constitution, the decision is his government's alone. So will he side with the national interest to build a new pipeline, or will he bow to President Trump and keep a supplicant to American interest instead of diversifying our energy exports?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, maybe we should come at this another way. That member is a British Columbia member. Is he really suggesting, even given the constituents he represents from First Nations, is he really suggesting that the Government of Canada, without the consent of the province of British Columbia, without consultation with First Nations, is in a position to do that? I think he doesn't really mean that. I think he hasn't thought this through, and I think that member, once he does, will come back here and agree that the Government of Canada is pursuing the right path.
Member for Okanagan Lake West, South
The arrogance of that answer, Mr. Speaker. He hasn't spoken to my constituents like I have on this issue. And right now, the only thing that is crossing provincial borders is this Prime Minister's indecision. A pizza shop is more productive than this Prime Minister because at least they know what business they're in and they know they need to deliver in a competitive marketplace. Section 9210 is clear. The power to act is his. So will the Prime Minister stop hiding behind premiers and process, or will he finally stand up for Canada, repeal the shipping ban, axe the industrial carbon tax, and build a new pipeline to the Pacific that is in the national interest?
The Honourable Minister responsible for Canada-US trade.
Speaker, we want to thank our colleague in the Conservative Party for that manufactured indignation. And Mr. Speaker, we want to remind him and his colleagues in the Conservative Party that our government made a commitment to Canadians in the last election. It was an election campaign that perhaps they'd prefer to forget. We made a commitment to build the Canadian economy the right way, to build major projects again in a way that respects environmental commitments, our obligations to Indigenous peoples, and working with provinces and territories. They don't like it, Mr. Speaker. We like it, and we're proud to continue to do it.
Hear, hear. Honourable Member for Calgary Signal Hill.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has stated that he wants to make Canada an energy superpower. Well, good news. This Prime Minister has the power to approve
I could see that coming. I could see that coming. In the business, it's called an applause line, but the member may start from the top. Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister has stated that he wants to make Canada an energy superpower. Well, good news. This Prime Minister has the power to approve a pipeline to the BC coast.
Speaker, from the top again.
Section 9210 of our Constitution gives the Prime Minister jurisdiction over interprovincial projects like pipelines, not premiers, the Prime Minister. So will he stop passing the buck and approve an oil pipeline to the coast so that we can get this nation-building pipeline built?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister so far has referred $117 billion, $117 billion of projects to the MPO. Maybe this member can join us tomorrow in Calgary and see how this government, with the provinces, is building Canada strong.
Honourable Member for Pickering-Brooklyn.
Mr. Speaker, this week as we begin the 60 days of activism against gender-based violence, and with today marking Economic Abuse Awareness Day, we are reminded of the countless women, children and families whose lives have been forever changed by abuse. And we are reminded that this violence doesn't always leave visible scars. It's often hidden behind closed doors, taking the form of control, isolation and economic abuse that can trap someone in a dangerous situation. Could the Minister of Women and Gender Equality speak to how our government is working to recognize and combat economic abuse and support those who are living through this painful and often invisible form of violence?
The Honourable Minister for Women and Gender Equality.
I thank my honourable colleague for that question. As we mark the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, we recognize the women who built this movement and the work that lies ahead. Our Economic Abuse Awareness Day, we recognize that gender-based violence can be physical, emotional, and psychological. That's why in our budget, we committed to working with financial institutions on a code of conduct to prevent economic abuse, helping them identify it and intervene safely. We will keep working together to end gender-based violence so women can live safely and free from fear. It's unfortunate the members opposite voted against this very measure.
The Honourable Member for Oshawa.
Mr. Speaker, when the Prime Minister was asked this weekend whether he had spoken to Trump about trade, he said, "Who cares?" Apparently, there is not a burning issue. Well, Mr. Speaker, Conservatives care, and so do the thousands of Oshawa auto workers at the GM assembly plant who are losing their jobs because of the trade war. How can the Prime Minister look Oshawa auto workers in the eye and tell them he doesn't care and that their jobs don't matter?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, great news for the Conservatives. We care. This afternoon, we're going to announce new measures, further limit foreign steel imports to ensure that Canadian steel products have better access to the domestic market, become our own best customer by building big with Canadian steel and Canadian lumber, increase protections for Canadian steel and lumber workers and businesses so they can adapt and thrive in this new global landscape. Mr. Speaker, that leader only cares about himself, squashing a caucus revolt, and thank you.
What the hell was that?
I mean, we have unfettered freedom of speech in this chamber. I recognize that, but I think both sides have to refrain from provocation. I think that can lead to disorder, which is unparliamentary. But the Honourable Member for Oshawa.
Mr. Speaker, what is clear is that instead of negotiating deals for Canadian auto workers, what they care about, and this Prime Minister cares about, is being more interested in negotiating deals for Brookfield.
Yeah,
Oshawa is set to lose thousands of jobs this January, even though this Prime Minister promised to negotiate a win. This is a burning issue for Oshawa auto workers. So why isn't it a burning issue for this Prime Minister?
Good question.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to report that I just recently met with the Unifor Union 222, that's the local chapter at the GM Oshawa plant, and they're happy with what our government is doing to support them. They've said that no deal is better than a bad deal. They've acknowledged our remissions framework and how we've adjusted it, and they are looking to us for leadership and more support. That's exactly what the Prime Minister is announcing later today for tariff-impacted industries. Our government stands steadfast and strong in support of our workers all across Canada. We won't stand down, and we won't take any lessons from the
honourable member for Niagara Falls, Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Speaker, after 8 months, this Prime Minister has gone from elbows up to who cares when it comes to trade issues with the United States. These comments spark concern in my community, particularly with the thousands of current and former GM workers in St. Catharines who worry about the future of their auto plant. GM has been in St. Catharines since 1929. I can tell you Conservatives care, Canadians care, the workers at these plants who depend on these jobs care. What's it going to take? Does Brookfield have to buy General Motors for this Liberal Prime Minister to finally care?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Labour.
Mr. Speaker, we were elected on a plan to build big, Mr. Speaker, and I've met with auto workers from across the country, Mr. Speaker, and they know that we have their backs, Mr. Speaker. In a few minutes, the Prime Minister will be announcing more supports for the auto sector, more supports for the steel industry, because we have their backs. But you know what? More than that, Mr. Speaker, we're building big. We're going to build projects in national interest, homes that skilled workers will use to build across this country, Mr. Speaker. Will the Conservatives get on board?
The honourable member for Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, in 2011, the Harper Conservative government created the conditions for Driver Inc., an illegal scheme where trucking companies misclassify drivers as independent contractors to avoid paying payroll taxes. This has hurt workers, distorted competition in the market, and deprived the federal government of important revenue that it should be able to use to invest in Canadians. In Budget 2025, our new Liberal government took action to end this scheme. Can the Secretary of State for the CRA please inform the House of the measures our government has taken to end Driver Inc.?
Good question. We know you don't like
the Secretary of State for
truckers.
the CRA.
We know that.
Mr. Speaker, in this historic budget, we are investing new resources to restore fairness to Canada's trucking industry after that party, the Conservatives, broke it. We will lift the moratorium on penalties for unreported fees for service, launch a dedicated compliance program, and expand information sharing with Employment and Social Development Canada. These measures will end the illegal Drivers Inc. scheme and level the playing field for companies that follow the law. The Conservatives and the Bloc Québécois both voted against Budget 2025. It's a shame that they didn't support tax fairness.
The honourable,
you're out of time.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent, Akiawenrak. Mr. Speaker, we know the Prime Minister is very familiar with Brookfield, but does he know about PACCAR? It's a business which has been making trucks for decades. Now they've announced 300 layoffs. So those are people, even parents, losing their jobs. Why? Because of American tariffs. Now, I know that it's not Brookfield at stake, but can the Prime Minister go talk to the workers at PACCAR and tell them who cares? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Industry. Mr. Speaker, I'm surprised by the colleague's question. Yes, we are currently in a trade war, which, yes, was triggered by... Is everyone surprised? But, Mr. Speaker, it's very important to remain level-headed. We can't just sign whatever deal with the United States. As for PACCAR, Mr. Speaker, we're in communication with the business. We have solutions, and we'll work on solutions with the Government of Quebec. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A brief reminder.
For Vancouver, Kingsway.
To address the chair.
Mr. Speaker, before he was elected, the Prime Minister claimed to care about the climate crisis and protecting our lands and waters. BC Liberal MPs all said they supported the tanker ban in northern BC. Now we see them stealing pages from the Conservative playbook. Without consulting the Premier of British Columbia or First Nations, Liberals are reversing 50 years of protection for sensitive coastal waters, overriding the law and risking billions of dollars of economic activity. Why are Liberals sacrificing the BC coast and betraying the voters who sent them here?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, our Prime Minister was very clear yesterday, and I think it's important to highlight that we will make sure, with any of the major projects that move forward, that we work with affected jurisdictions. That means all of the provinces, and we will work with Indigenous rights holders, respecting their positions and their rights. We will make sure that we continue to build Canada as a strong country, strong future for our country, and we will make sure that we do it well.
Hear, hear.
This concludes question period for today. Yes, it is. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, with all due respect, you prevented me from asking a question regarding the operations of the government. If you will now allow me, I will ask the question. It wasn't involving the operations of the government. It involved a provincial legislature. It, in all semblance, had nothing to do with the politics of this federal government. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, with all due respect, twice today, you have prevented a member from Mr. Speaker, during QP, if I may finish, I won't be long. Twice now, you have prevented a member from finishing their question. A question that did have relevance to the government. I am sorry, that is true, that it happens from time to time. The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé is rising on a point of order. Yes. First, Mr. Speaker, if I may, on the same point of order. With all due respect, we have the right to ask questions about what is in the media, TVA, Radio-Canada. We have the right to ask questions about current affairs in the House. In my view, the question did not concern federal government policies or programs, nor did it concern the federal cabinet. That is why I did not allow the question.
Yes, it did.
Does the member have a further point of order? Yes, on a different point of order, Mr. Speaker. If you ask, you will find there is unanimous consent for the following motion. That for the duration of the tribute for the member for Bécancour, Nicolas Sorel, that member be sat in the seat belonging to the member for Mirabel. All agreed? I believe we have unanimous consent. As such, the member can change his seat.
Can you go for Wood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wonder if you can clarify the rules around a question, 30-second in duration, that begins with a preamble that may seem to be unrelated to government business, but that concludes on a matter that is related to government business. In the past, members have been able to finish.
Allow a bit of a preamble, but in this case, I don't think that the second part of the question respected the rules. So I ruled it out of order. I'm sorry.
I listened long enough to discern the conclusion of the question. Now, as it is 3:12 p.m., pursuant to the order adopted on November 24th, 2025, the House will now proceed to tributes for the member for Bécancour, Nicolas Sorel-Alnavac. The Honourable Member for Beloeil.
Okay, we're still going to stick around on this stream just for a little bit longer. I want to hear what Carney has to say in his press conference. More so, I want to hear what the reporters have to ask him, because the last two times he's had reporter questions, he's been a little bit unhinged. So the press conference is supposed to start in about 2 minutes. I've got that on my other monitor, and we're going to just switch over to that as soon as it starts. And we're going to hear what Carney has to say. It's supposed to be about steel, and I'm assuming he's going to announce new measures, but we'll see. As for committees, there are some committees on starting soon, but none of them are really that interesting, to be honest. We're just going to stick around on this stream. We're going to watch the Carney press conference, and then we're going to call it. So,
he has one record no one talks about is the way he has chaired the House. He has chaired the election of a number of chairs. He has not been sitting on the Speaker's chair for a long time, if you add it all together, but he has sat on the Speaker's chair a lot of times. He has just beat the service record of Wilfrid Laurier. And since 1990, he has been fighting for an independent Quebec. You'd think you'd understand by now that the only way Canada will ever get rid of this tenacious MP is to grant Quebec independence. But the thing is, even federalists like this guy, so it's hard for the government to deal with. The member has seen the name of his riding change a number of times. He has also seen his party change a number of times. He sat under the government of Brian Mulroney 4 years after the 1980 referendum. He sat under Lucien Bouchard after the 1995 referendum. He traveled throughout Quebec campaigning with Gilles Duceppe. And now he is making history once again. He once sat as a member of the opposition caucus, the opposition bloc caucus, with 54 bloc MPs. You'd think he... and yet he is still not leader of the bloc. He could speak volumes about his wisdom, and I will speak volumes about his friendship.
Okay, enough of this. Here we go. Switch over. Oh. Let me change this. Okay. We got some audio. And you can see they're just waiting for Carnage to slowly walk over here. Any minute now. What is Blanchet talking about? I believe he's talking about Louis Plamondon. I don't know how to say his name. Plamondon? Anyways, one of the members for the bloc, and I think he's got cancer or something. I'm not sure exactly. I didn't really look too much into that situation. All right, here's Carnage. Let's hear what this Yahoo has to say.
PC was there. Yeah, there we go. Okay, apologies for being a minute late. Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Just as I begin, I'd like to welcome Ron Bedard, the President and CEO of Dofasco. Thank you, Ron, for coming here today. More substantively, thank you for leading one of Canada's great steel companies, but also for helping us in designing some of these support measures that I'm going to talk about today and some of that we put in place. This is an important day for Canada's workers. Look, we know the world's changing. We know that this decades-long process of our ever closer economic relationship between Canada and the United States has ended. And as a consequence of that, many of our strengths have become our vulnerabilities, particularly in those industries that are most tightly integrated with the United States. Headline, last year, 75% of our exports went to the U.S. 90% of our lumber exports went to the U.S. 90% of our aluminum exports went to the United States. 90% of our steel exports went there, all bound for a single market that has changed. Overall, for the Canadian economy, we estimate that U.S. tariffs and the uncertainty that they're creating will cost Canadians around 1.8% of GDP. That's about $50 billion lost from our economy, or the equivalent of $1,300 for every Canadian. And this is happening fast. It's a rupture, which means that our economic strategy needs to change dramatically and rapidly. And that change is in Budget 2025, our plan to confront these challenges and emerge even stronger, to move our economy from reliance to resilience, and to give ourselves far more than any foreign nation can ever take away. Le budget vise à bâtir un Canada fort en mettant l'accent sur ce que nous pouvons contrôler, c'est-à-dire bâtir ici, chez nous, afin de protéger les Canadiens et Canadiennes et de leur donner les moyens de réussir. Stimuler notre productivité pour assurer une prospérité durable. Transformer la façon dont le gouvernement travaille pour vous. Diversifier nos partenariats commerciaux à l'étranger afin de créer plus de possibilités et d'accroître notre indépendance. The core of the strategy in Budget 2025 is to unleash $1 trillion in total investments in Canada over the course of the next 5 years. That alone will increase our GDP by over 3.5%, or $3,500 for every Canadian worker, more than twice what's being taken from us. Now, to help get there, we must protect our workers and our industries who are most exposed to U.S. tariffs. That means in steel, aluminum, auto, and lumber sectors. Help them bridge to the future. Nous avons déjà pris des mesures décisives pour limiter les exportations d'acier étranger, devenir notre meilleur client en achetant canadien, permettre à nos industries stratégiques de se diversifier et de conquérir de nouveaux marchés, protéger nos travailleurs et nos industries qui sont touchés par les droits de douane américaines. Back in July, we restricted foreign steel imports entering Canada's market, expanded training and income support for steel workers, and provided liquidity relief for businesses. The government, for example, provided a $400 million loan to help Algoma Steel in Sault Ste. Marie to transition to a business model that's less reliant on the United States. In August, we introduced new measures to help the softwood lumber industry stay competitive, including financing for company restructuring, investments to diversify products, income and training supports for affected workers, and prioritizing Canadian lumber in home building. In September, we launched a comprehensive industrial strategy with new reskilling programs, a new $5 billion strategic response fund to help businesses pivot to new markets, and we announced that we would create a new Buy Canadian policy across federal agencies. We also reduced red tape and increased loan limits to help large firms access the liquidity that they need. These measures are working. We've received close to 1,500 applications from companies across the steel, aluminum, lumber, manufacturing, automotive, and seafood sectors through our Regional Tariff Response Initiative. In the steel sector alone, more than 230 firms have applied and support's already being delivered. So some examples. Because of these initiatives, Cherubini Metal Works in Nova Scotia is modernizing its metal and fabrication lines to export more products overseas. And Hooper Welding in Hamilton will grow its capacity to produce fabrication equipment required for Canadian and international energy projects. Grâce à ce financement ciblé, les entreprises canadiennes intègrent de nouvelles technologies, lancent de nouveaux produits pour diversifier leur marché, s'assurent de jouer un rôle dans les chaînes d'approvisionnement nationales et, par ces améliorations, participent à des missions commerciales partout dans le monde. Our investments are also protecting workers, providing relief to nearly 37,000 Canadians during this period of of uncertainty. So far, they've prevented more than 14,000 Canadians from losing their jobs. More broadly, across our economy, employment is rebounding after the early impacts of the trade war. More than 120,000 total jobs have been created since March. What we're doing today is to reinforce that momentum with new strengthened measures to accelerate the transformation of the Canadian steel and lumber industries, to build strong domestic demand for their products, and to empower their workers and businesses to seize new markets at home and abroad. So these new measures focus on three core objectives. First, to further limit foreign steel imports so as to increase domestic demand for Canadian steel producers. Second, to make it easier to buy and build with Canadian steel and lumber. And third, to invest in workers and businesses so they have the tools and the resources that they need to drive this industrial transformation. So let me start with limiting foreign steel imports to ensure that our steel producers have a bigger share of our market. Doing so will unlock hundreds of millions of dollars in domestic demand for those producers. We will reduce tariff-free steel imports from non-free trade area partners from 50% of 2024 levels, as it is today, to 20% of those levels. This will open up more than $850 million in new domestic demand for Canadian steel. Second, we will reduce tariff-free steel imports from non-CUSMA free trade area partners from 100% of 2024 levels to 75% of those levels, unlocking more than $540 million in additional market access for our producers. We'll impose a global 25% tariff on targeted imported steel derivative products, such as wind towers, prefabricated buildings, fasteners, and wires, to grow demand for Canadian-made steel. Those products as a whole represent about a $10 billion market. And we will toughen our broader compliance measures to prevent foreign steel dumping. To do so, the Canadian Border Service Agency will be equipped with a dedicated steel compliance team, enhanced detection of false declarations, and expanded online reporting tools. Our temporary horizontal remission of Canadian tariffs on imports has helped Canadian businesses deal with the early impacts of those tariffs. However, over the longer term, such broad remissions would only hurt Canada's steel sector. So to move away from relying on imported steel and to give Canadian companies time to adjust their supply chains to use Canadian steel, those temporary remission measures will end on January 31st, 2026, for steel used in Canada for manufacturing, food and beverage packaging, and agricultural production. Now, the second broad way to drive transformation of our strategic industries is by becoming our own best customer. So we'll build big with Canadian suppliers, investing in roads, bridges, homes, and community centers. A bit later this year, we'll implement that Buy Canadian policy, which will ensure that Canadian materials, including steel and lumber, are prioritized in all contracts over $25 million, and that this applies across federal grants and contribution programs, especially those in infrastructure. To maximize the use of Canadian softwood lumber in housing and infrastructure, we will prioritize shovel-ready, multi-year projects that can begin in the next 12 months using, of course, Canadian wood. With a funding allocation of roughly $700 million next year, Build Canada Homes, our new federal home building agency, this alone will create $70 to $140 million of new demand for Canadian wood products and attract private and provincial capital to multiply that impact. In order to build on that, I'm announcing today that we will make it more affordable to transport Canadian steel and lumber across this country by cutting freight rates for transporting steel and lumber interprovincially by 50%. We'll do that through funding directly Canadian National and Canadian Pacific Kansas City Railways.
Okay, and
finally, we will increase protections for Canadian steel and lumber workers and those businesses so they can adapt and seize new opportunities.
We should get rid of the
We'll help
industrial carbon
employers
tax.
retain workers by expanding our earlier supports and enhancing our work-sharing programs, increasing income replacement ratios, income replacement benefits from 55% to 70%. We will also provide an additional $500 million to the Business Development Bank of Canada's Softwood Lumber Guarantee Program to ensure that companies have the financing and the credit support that they need to maintain and restructure their operations during this period of transformation.
It's not what they need. They don't need
And
to borrow
similarly,
more money.
we will deploy $500 million in funding under the Large Enterprise Tariff Loan Facility, specifically for softwood lumber firms, the larger ones facing liquidity pressures. We'll make it easier for the forestry sector to access federal support by establishing a single window for applications, a one-stop shop to help companies navigate our broad suite of support programs. And lastly, we will launch a Canadian Forest Sector Transformation Task Force that seeks input and recommendations from provinces, territories, and industry on how to seize new opportunities in softwood lumber and create new growth in the sector.
Oh, great.
Ces mesures de soutien,
A new task
jumelées
force, guys.
à celles mises en place plus tôt cette année, permettront aux producteurs d'acier canadiens et de bois d'œuvre canadiens de bénéficier d'un accès au marché intérieur représentant des centaines de millions de dollars. En effet, c'est plus de milliards de dollars. Elles créeront de nouvelles possibilités pour les travailleurs à mesure que la demande intérieure augmentera et offreront aux entreprises le soutien dont elles ont besoin pour s'adapter au contexte mondial en pleine évolution. Nous veillons à ce que les entreprises canadiennes du secteur de l'acier et de bois d'œuvre disposent des capitaux, des talents et du temps nécessaires pour acquérir les compétences, les outils et les installations qui leur permettront de contribuer à bâtir une économie canadienne forte. The hundreds of billions of dollars of infrastructure and housing investments that Budget 2025 will unleash will create significant demand for Canadian steel and lumber, as will our new trade and investment partnerships around the world. Last week, I was in Abu Dhabi, where the UAE announced their decision to invest $70 billion in Canada. In Johannesburg, for the G20, we launched discussions towards a Canada-South Africa Foreign Investment Promotion and Partnership Agreement that will deepen investment between our two nations. And we agreed to launch comprehensive free trade talks with India, the world's fifth largest economy. Nous avons entamé des négociations commerciales avec EAU et les Philippines et la Thaïlande, et nous travaillons à la finalisation de notre accord avec l'ANAS. Cela s'ajoute aux accords que notre gouvernement a déjà conclus avec l'Indonésie, l'Équateur, l'Union européenne et l'Allemagne. Les pays du monde entier souhaitent investir au Canada et bâtir avec nous. Nous réalisons les investissements stratégiques nécessaires pour que nous puissions produire et exporter plus de ce dont le monde a besoin, notamment de l'acier canadien et de bois d'œuvre canadien. The Canadian steel and lumber industries will always be at the heart of Canada's competitiveness, our security, and our strength. These are sectors that reflect our country's character, resilient and forward-looking, with a history of reinventing themselves at pivotal moments. Et à ce moment charnière de notre histoire, le Canada passe de la dépendance à la résilience. Nous pouvons nous donner bien plus que ce que n'importe quel gouvernement étranger ne pourra jamais nous enlever. Nous bâtissons une seule économie canadienne au lieu de 13. Nous bâtissons ensemble de projets d'intérêt national.
Okay,
Nous
questions?
réalisons des investissements sans précédent dans notre défense et notre sécurité et nous diversifions nos relations commerciales. We'll build Canada strong with the workers and the resources that build our community strong. Canadian workers, Canadian steel and lumber. With them, we'll build Hamilton strong, Sault Ste. Marie strong, Saguenay fort, Miramichi fort, for Canada fort, Canada strong. Thank you. Merci. I look forward to your questions.
All right, let's
Thank you, Prime Minister. We're now going to begin the question portion of the press conference. We've got about 20 minutes for question. Première question, Catherine.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Kate McKenna with CBC News. How do you explain to your caucus, particularly caucus members who might be quite hesitant, that your government is going to be working with the government of Alberta potentially towards a pipeline deal?
Well, the first thing is I'm blessed to be a member of a fantastic caucus, a caucus that represents every province in this country, caucus members from the north, the largest women's caucus in Canadian history, the largest Indigenous caucus. So we have a diverse caucus in all respects, and we enjoy a very open and engaged dialogue. And I will say specifically to today's announcement, not tomorrow's announcement, I'll say specifically to today's announcement, that our caucus members in Hamilton, in Sault Ste. Marie, in Quebec, in BC, across this country, in Atlantic Canada, New Brunswick, those caucus members have a very good sense of what's going on in the steel industry, in the forest products industry, and they've helped shape this package, as have members of industry, unions, and others. With respect to tomorrow's intended announcement with Alberta, the Memorandum of Understanding, it is about much more than one thing. It is, and fundamentally, it's about building this economy. It's about making Canada more independent, and it's about making Canada more sustainable. So I would suggest that we wait until the full announcement is made tomorrow so you can see it in the round. En français, en ce qui concerne le caucus, j'ai eu la chance d'avoir un caucus très divers, un caucus avec des membres dans chaque province au nord du Canada, le plus grand caucus des femmes dans l'histoire du Canada, le plus grand caucus des peuples autochtones dans l'histoire du Canada. C'est un caucus ouvert avec des bonnes discussions et une caucus, des membres du caucus à travers le pays de Colombie-Britannique, à Nouvelle-Écosse, y compris Québec, en forme cette annonce aujourd'hui. Cette annonce aujourd'hui parce qu'ils savent, ils et elles savent la situation dans le secteur de l'acier et de bois d'œuvre. Premier point. Deuxième point, en ce qui concerne le protocole d'accord avec Alberta, l'annonce pour demain, ce protocole est plus grand qu'un oléoduc. Oui, il y a un aspect là, mais au fond, c'est un protocole qui va renforcer l'économie canadienne, qui va renforcer l'indépendance canadienne, qui va renforcer la soutenabilité de notre économie. Alors, on peut discuter tous les aspects demain quand vous pouvez le voir ensemble. Merci.
My follow-up question is on U.S.-Canada trade. You've said that you want to get the best deal for Canada and that you're not rushing to any sort of deal. Do you get the sense that other countries regret the deals that they've made with President Trump?
It's a question for them. Look, I think this is what I'll say about other countries. Every country wants to do a deal with Canada. Or if they have a relationship with Canada, they want to deepen that relationship with Canada. And this is a real opportunity for us. Of course, we want to further improve the existing trading relationship with the United States. We stand ready to re-engage when they are. But at the same time, we're going to do a few other things. First and foremost, build this economy, to be masters in our home, maîtres chez nous, and invest to make sure our strategic industries are there when we need them. And then secondly, to develop those commercial relationships abroad. And I think you're seeing, given the scale of agreements that we're concluding and launching, and the time frame, and I'll make one last point and then pass to your colleague if I may, which is, when we're announcing these free trade deals, for example, with India, the start of the intention for negotiations, or with Thailand or the Philippines as three recent examples. The intention is to conclude these in a year. Okay, this is not, let's have a 5 to 8 year long process. Let's focus, let's take the opportunity, let's diversify, let's build out, and that itself will start to seal. We have to conclude these, obviously, but we want to have, and a final point on it if I can, sorry, I think I've already beyond my final point, but this is one of the many reasons why we want to make sure that we maintain the capacity in our steel industry, in our lumber industry, in our aluminum industry, and other strategic industries, and the workers as much as possible, like in their roles and their jobs, because demand is coming. We're creating that demand, and that's a big part of what this announcement today is about. Merci.
Bonjour, M. Carney. Mylène Crête de la presse. Pourquoi ne pas, pour l'industrie du bois d'œuvre, pourquoi ne pas avoir annoncé un plan de sauvetage avec une subvention salariale comme c'était demandé?
Au fond, il y a des soutiens pour les travailleurs dans le secteur du bois d'œuvre, les changements de niveau de remplacement des salaires des travailleurs dans le secteur du bois d'œuvre, y compris le secteur de l'acier. Et dans ce contexte, c'est plus facile c'est plus rentable et facile de garder, de maintenir l'emploi des individus, parce que on peut avoir des temps partiels. Et avec les discussions avec les sociétés dans le secteur, le ratio, si je peux dire comme ça, le ratio était, jusqu'à maintenant, était 55%. Et c'était, en effet, c'était trop bas. Alors, nous allons l'enlever à 70%. Et ça va aider beaucoup. Ça, c'est le conseil des sociétés dans le secteur. Ça c'est le premier point. Oui.
Ma deuxième question va porter... Est-ce que vous aviez terminé? Oui.
Oui. Je dois terminer maintenant. Okay. Ma
deuxième question porte sur la semaine prochaine. Est-ce que vous allez aller aux États-Unis, et si oui, comptez-vous rencontrer Donald Trump?
Oui. En effet, oui. Oui et oui.
Vous allez aux États-Unis, vous
Oui, il y a un événement, et oui, c'est planifié d'y aller pour l'événement de la Coupe mondiale. C'est un événement comment on dit, on choisit les matchs, en effet, les groupes pour les matchs. Et, pardon? Sélection. Tu m'as compris, monsieur. Quand même. Alors, sélection. On va sélectionner les groupes pour les groupes pour la concurrence. Mais on va avoir une conversation. Nous avons eu une petite conversation hier, par exemple. J'ai eu des conversations avec lui du temps, OK? No. I had a conversation. I went back and forth. But look, this is the kind of thing I didn't want to get drawn into, which is every little exchange. There are substantive meetings and conversations and negotiations, and that's not what I'm alluding to be clear. And next week, next week is an important event for Canada because we are one of the co-hosts, as you know, of the World Cup, and I'll be participating alongside President Trump, the co-host, and the FIFA president. There'll be the selections of the countries for the various groups, Canada included, and I'll see the president around there. But again, I don't want to over-signal thing. This is something I'm trying to what matters is the negotiations when they re-engage. They haven't re-engaged yet, so that's the fundamental point.
Next question.
Sorry, can we wait?
Next question. Michel.
Bonjour, Monsieur Carney. Michel Sabat, la presse canadienne.
Not more French questions. God damn it.
Aux écologistes, y compris vraisemblablement dans votre propre caucus,
Let me see if we can get the translation for this. I'll just switch to like one of the fucking, excuse my language, one of the mainstream media.
Okay, premier point.
Tomorrow there'll be an announcement. And there'll be many aspects in the announcement. It's not now, before the announcement, but there's many aspects. And second point, as far as all the projects at the national level, the nation building, we must align our climate objectives, including, for example, the projects of GNL and in British Columbia that are the cleaner and sustainable project of the world. So, if there'll be a pipeline, we must have a combination of governmental objectives. But we can discuss all of that. But do you promise Alberta to remove the interdiction on the west coast of sir, it's a good question for tomorrow. But I'm asking it today. But I'll answer tomorrow. I'll answer tomorrow.
Next question.
Hi. Judam Elise Bloomberg. Today you've announced tariffs today on the U.S. for the first time, or they'll affect the U.S., but the first time since you pulled back retaliatory tariffs. How do you think this will affect the prospects of a trade deal with the U.S., and are you worried about retaliation?
So I think the first thing to say is that what we have done is to put in place adjustments to remissions and tariffs on certain steel derivative products, as you know. And so these are products that, derivatives is a fancy name for products that are substantially comprised of steel. And it is a much more targeted level of that steel than, for example, the United States has done with their steel derivatives, which is quite broad application. The U.S. looks to calculate the proportions in steel. That approach is global. It's global. It's not targeted at the U.S., okay? So that's the first thing that's very important. So it's a global approach which is creating some space for Canadian steel producers to fill in. First point. Second point, with respect to the changes we're making in tariffs, so for non-free trade countries, going from 50% to 20%, the sort of tariff rate quota, this is Bloomberg, so I can talk like that, right? And for free trade countries, going from 100 to 75%, the U.S. is not included in that. So there's no change in the tariff for the U.S. or for Mexico in that regard. So I think that answers the question.
On ending the remission, I'm wondering why you chose January 31st, and is this an attempt to add pressure to the U.S.? No. Or is it an acknowledgement that you're not going to get a deal?
I'm going to reinforce. It is a global approach. It is a global approach. And what it is, January 31st, is a judgment based on our working with companies that use these products and the time in which it can take Canadian companies to ramp up and fulfill that demand. So you don't do it overnight because people have certain relationships, certain contracts as a consequence of that. But you also don't do it a year from now or else it doesn't have any benefit for the Canadian industry. I mean, this is, it's $10 billion of market share that potentially, or of demand, the steel proportion of that potentially can be captured. So that's the timing is based on the adjustment timetable. There's no signal. There's no signal to any country in the world. It's just there's a signal to Canadian buyers of steel and Canadian producers of steel. that there's an opportunity. Yeah.
Next question. Prochaine question.
Hello, Paul Dutch, Global News. When it comes to lowering import quotas for foreign steel imports, are you concerned about any potential retaliation from countries like China?
Well, look, we have we've re-engaged with China, and in a very positive way, and the starting of a broader discussion of amongst other things, our broader trading relationship. There's this sector, there's clean energy sector, there's a series of important issues on the agricultural side, the seafood side, there's opportunities for Canada on the lumber side, et cetera, and so those discussions will continue, and it's part of a broader relationship. But look, if you look at what's happening in the world, given the changes, the fundamental changes in tariff policy, you see a number of jurisdictions starting to make adjustments because of the reallocation of capacity. I'll just refer to the European Union currently has proposals around restricting free trade partners to 50% or 48% to be precise, of their previous levels. So,
follow-up.
And to clarify, when you go to the U.S. next week, apart from the FIFA draw, will you be looking to officially restart trade talks with the U.S. again?
Look, it's again, I don't want to over-dramatize it, so I will repeat that we are ready to re-engage on those talks when the United States wants to re-engage. Nous sommes prêts de recommencer les discussions avec les Américains en ce qui concerne des secteurs stratégiques.
These strategic sectors.
Les Américains
when the Americans will be ready.
Next question.
It's Annie Bergeron-Oliver with CTV National News.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if Canadians should interpret today's announcements as a concession that there's no deal in the near future for the steel and lumber sectors.
You should interpret the announcement that this government will do whatever it takes to protect our sectors, and not just protect them, but to help them reposition for the new global economy, and help them be in a position to build this great country. And we need these sectors to build this country. We're going to build this country at a scale and at a pace, and we need the strong sectors. So we're positioning, this is part of positioning the sector for that.
You mentioned in French that you had a conversation with Donald Trump over the last 24 hours.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that, please? And also, when you go to Washington next week, will you bring up with him the pain that our sectors are currently facing and talk about re-engaging?
I'll bring up with him what I bring up with him when I see him. These are points I do make to him. My exchange with the president yesterday was not newsworthy.
So it wasn't about...
I just responded to a question, wasn't newsworthy. How's that?
Next question.
I think that's for us to decide, though.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next question.
Bonjour, Adrienne de Radio-Canada. Pourquoi ne pas avoir consulté le caucus de la Colombie-Britannique
did you consult your BC caucus before confirming the deal with Alberta? Like I said a few minutes ago, we have a process of caucus that's very open, a lot of discussion. I'm aware of the issues in British Columbia. I had conversation with them. And I was there 10 days ago, I think, in British Columbia. So we have to make decisions. How do you want to keep the cohesion in your caucus? I think I've already answered this question, and I think I can repeat. We have a caucus that's open, diverse, that's solid, with very good exchange of ideas, of the worries and issues. And like I said, for example, for the announcement of today, it's been well informed by members of the caucus.
Hi, this is Catherine with the Canadian Press. Speaking about today's announcement, I'm wondering if you can share why these measures were not included in the federal budget and if the tariff quotas announced in July didn't go far enough.
Well, I think what we've seen, let me start with the second bit of that, which is that the adjustments, for example, there's been additional tariff measures that have been put on by other countries. For example, the United States with respect to steel derivatives, that process has come into force and has broadened, so that has had knock-on impacts on the sector. So that's one big reason, and in fact, that would almost be a sufficient reason to justify, plus the additional U.S. tariffs on lumber. So you have those aspects, and then, as I alluded to in one of the earlier answers, you see knock-on effects of what's happening in the U.S. and elsewhere on tariff measures that other countries are taking, or jurisdictions in this case. The European Union would be one example. So all of that sort of comes back onto Canada. First, that's the first, and that's kind of enough. Secondly, you learn things as we have facilities in place, the ease with which companies are able to pull down the draw down the money, the terms. So we should always be looking at that, learning, adjusting, and that's part of what we've done. Some of this is simplification as well, but I think as well is that pulling that together. Informed by discussions with industry. For example, Mr. Bedard is here. But also other members of the Canadian Steel Producers Association, discussing with those CEOs about what's going on in their companies, what would make a difference to them. And so we craft something that keeps the market as fluid as possible, as much efficiency as possible, but also makes the biggest impact. And so that's the consequence of that. And, the government is not going to produce a budget and then, take the next year off. We're going to continue to move.
Last follow-up, Catherine.
Thank you. And you're promising to subsidize interprovincial rail costs for steel and lumber. But what about the north, where there are no railroads and much of the building materials sail by boat? I'm wondering if the government is committed to extending the same subsidy to those territories where construction costs are exponentially higher.
Well, first off, thank you for asking a question about the territories. This is an issue. The short answer is that the rail subsidy, the 50% cut in the rail cost, is theoretically would extend to the north, but practically doesn't because, as you just said, and we have issues with transport. There's lots of issues with transport costs for the north, and one of the things that we're doing is looking at where are the biggest areas where we can reduce. And we made an announcement 10 days ago on the major projects, and part of that, and I'll finish with this, on the Iqaluit Hydro. What that is saving is, tens of thousands of tons of diesel being trucked up, or not trucked up, boated up, with detriment to the environment, but also just huge transportation costs. We're moving to clean power in situ and being built out. So a lot of the infrastructure, it will take some time, but is to address those types of issues as well in the north. But thank you for the question.
The answer is no.
Thank you, Prime Minister. This puts an end to our press conference. C'est ce qui met fin à notre conférence de presse. Merci.
Okay. That's the end of that. To be honest, I just listened to about half hour of him saying absolutely nothing. Like, in short sense, he's going to give higher loans at a lower interest rate to companies that are already failing, as if they want to go into more debt to save their it makes no sense.
From relying on imported steel. So the details on imported steel means that he's going to limit foreign steel imports from 50% of 2024 levels to 20% of 2024 levels, and impose a global 25% tariff targeted to steel derivatives. Those are products that are largely made of steel. He's going to provide support for workers in both the steel and lumber industry.
I also don't think Trump's going to respond to that well. If you're going to the White House next week and you want to negotiate a better deal, but you just slapped more tariffs on them, Trump never responds to that well. So, master negotiator, putting us at a weaker position again. Anyway. There are some committees on, but we're not going to be watching any committees. None of them are interesting today. We are going to be live tomorrow at 11 a.m. For Anita Anod in committee, I believe. It's either that's in the morning or that's in the afternoon. We've got question period at 2. We've got another committee on in the afternoon. So we'll be quite busy tomorrow with 3 live streams.
negotiations.
And who cares comment. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it. We'll call it here for today. I hope everybody has a great evening. I know some people have already tuned out. But Raven, thank you so much for the gifted. Thank you, Gordon, for the gifted memberships. Shane, welcome into the club. Pokey and Cindy, thank you so much for the super chats. Always appreciate you guys with that. Thanks everyone for tuning in and watching, obviously, but if you go the extra route for supporting, it always is very much appreciated. I will see you guys tomorrow. And yeah, busy day tomorrow. So everybody enjoy your evening and have a fantastic rest of your day. See you guys.
Was today's announcement of supports enough?
Well, first of all, I think it's important that, if I understand correctly, he's going to reduce the level of imports